In the early 20th century, tuberculosis was the world's leading cause of death. This devastating disease caused untold suffering and claimed millions of lives across the globe. But it was a small town in Minnesota that would play a vital role in creating a new holistic treatment model and ultimately in finding a cure to this global scourge. Glen Lake Sanatorium pioneered new tuberculosis treatments, services, and prevention methods. Along with the Mayo Clinic, in the 1940s, it conducted groundbreaking drug trials, marking the beginning of our triumph over tuberculosis. In the early 1900s, tuberculosis was rapidly spreading throughout the U.S. People who could afford it moved away from the close and unsanitary living conditions of cities and tenements in hopes of avoiding or recovering from the disease. Minnesota's cold climate and landscape of fresh air, woods, and lakes made the state an ideal destination. Unfortunately, the droves of tuberculosis patients flooding in began spreading the disease to healthy residents. In response, Minnesota launched a major sanitation and hygiene campaign, and in 1913 began creating a statewide network of sanatoriums to isolate and treat patients. Amid acres of woods, farmland, and raspberry fields southwest of Minneapolis, construction began on Glen Lake Sanatorium. In January 1916, in the middle of a blizzard, the first patient arrived. Most sanatoriums in the U.S. were basic, small, and understaffed. But Glen Lake's new superintendent, Dr. Ernest Mariette, had a grander vision of a large, self-contained community where all patient needs could be met. Glen Lake provided patients with the basics they needed to heal: rest, sunlight, good food, and light exercise. Treatment started with intensive bed rest, transitioning into limited activity. Although the scientific benefits of vitamin D were not yet known, Glen Lake knew heliotherapy had a positive impact and prescribed sunbathing in the fresh Minnesota air. Additionally, while nutrition was still an emerging field, Glen Lake became one of the first hospitals to employ a licensed dietitian. Glen Lake was also unusual in its strong emphasis on rigorous patient training in sanitation habits to prevent contagion. When the disease couldn't be managed solely with these basics, doctors turned to surgery. Lung collapse to kill bacteria living inside the lungs, and immobilization of the lung to limit its movement and promote healing were the most common surgeries practiced at this time. But Glen Lake's priority was not just treating disease. Uniquely for that time, Dr. Mariette embraced a holistic approach to patient care, rooted in treating the whole person. Tuberculosis was an incredibly isolating disease. Once diagnosed, people's entire lives were disrupted. They were taken away from their homes, families, and jobs and confined to facilities.
When you did get to see your parents, you couldn't touch them or get a hug or anything from them, so that was very difficult.
Creating a vibrant sanatorium community became crucial for patient recovery and preventing depression.
We had a happy childhood here. It was just like being in your family. I don't think we even understood that the nurses were on duty and left. It was just, we saw them every day and there was a continuity and they were like family.
To support mental health, Glen Lake hired a social worker, which was unheard of at the time. Furthermore, while most sanatoriums had segregated wards, Glen Lake was integrated, helping include the already small population of minority patients in the sanatorium community. To stay active and positive, patients could read, listen to music, and do occupational therapy, including arts and crafts. Social events fostered togetherness, with visits by vaudeville acts, musicians, and celebrities. The sanatorium also had its own patient-run radio station and newspaper, which helped isolated patients feel more involved and built camaraderie. To help patients grow and learn, Glen Lake offered vocational classes to learn hard skills and high school classes to earn a GED. Glen Lake also helped ex-patients transition back into society, offering them light work at the sanatorium to earn money. As demand increased, Glen Lake grew rapidly. In 1925, a children's tuberculosis camp was established adjacent to the sanatorium in the town of Eden Prairie, emphasizing play, work, food, and rest. Over time, along with sanatoriums in New York and Colorado, Glen Lake became a hub for doctors and medical professionals from all over the world to train and study the disease. It developed a strong reputation as a pioneer in tuberculosis treatment and became the first sanatorium in the country and the second in the world accredited by the American College of Surgeons. While Glen Lake had stronger patient outcomes than many, thanks to its innovative care and treatment methods, tuberculosis still had no cure and was often fatal. The tide turned, however, in 1943. After decades of research, Rutgers University scientists discovered a chemotherapy drug called streptomycin and quietly offered it to the Mayo Clinic for guinea pig testing. Results were so successful that, in 1945, scientists decided to test the drug on patients. Glen Lake was chosen to conduct these trials because of its extensive lab facilities and quality patient care. Along with Mineral Springs, a small sanatorium near Mayo, Glen Lake became the first in the world to administer streptomycin to patients, stepping onto the global stage. Miraculously, the drug saved the lives of numerous terminally ill patients.
I was very ill, probably very close to death, and just in the nick of time, I got the drug streptomycin, and obviously I survived, and I'm very happy about that.
In 1947, streptomycin was approved by the FDA, revolutionizing the world's fight against tuberculosis.
It was not until the chemotherapy drugs, streptomycin and so forth, came out that we began to have the real ray of hope.
In the following years, the drugs isoniazid and para-aminosalicylic acid also joined the fight after successful trials at Glen Lake and other institutions throughout the 1940s and 1950s. By the late 1960s, with effective medication, surgeries, and treatment, plus better hygiene and detection, there was little need for tuberculosis sanatoriums in the U.S. Glen Lake was turned into a nursing home in 1961, and in 1993, due to deteriorating conditions, it was demolished. The land that had been home to so many sick people for so many decades is now a public golf course for the Minnetonka community. Glen Lake Sanatorium may be gone, but its legacy remains powerful. Today, tuberculosis rates in the U.S. are near an all-time low, although the disease remains a threat in much of the developing world. Scientists continue to strive to find new treatments, inspired by the legacy of sanatoriums like Glen Lake that helped push the boundaries of disease treatment and prevention. Despite its unassuming small-town origins, Glen Lake worked tirelessly to innovate, test new drugs and treatment methods, and collaborate with medical specialists from around the world to eradicate this deadly disease. Perhaps most importantly, they illustrated the importance of caring for the patient's spirit as well as their body and never giving up hope.